And you have mentioned already that the good old Healy, I have it here, it hides at my white shirt. This will always stay in the center. And it's not that the MEG Healy will replace it, but it complements it. And this complementation is so much necessary because we have two polarities in the electromagnetic field. One is the electrical field and one is the magnetic field. The electrical field is a scalar, whereas the magnetic field is a vector. So a scalar is only one component, whereas the magnetic field as a vector has three components. So the scalar of the electric field and the vector of the magnetic field, so the electric plus the magnetic field, they give a 4 vector of the electromagnetic field. And also the potential, the electromagnetic potential behind. Remember when we introduced the coil, we were talking about the magnetic potential. It's a vector also, and there is a scalar field behind the electrical field. So the magnetic field has 3 degrees of freedom, whereas the electrical field has 1 degree of freedom. And therefore the dynamical, the changing, the pulsating magnetic field is so important. In this way, we are completing. I will show you my Healy. This one is a really old one. You see, it looks very much different from you. Here even, it's the old original logo, which we had from Time Weather when Healy didn't have his own corporate design, but I still keep the old ones because they work as well as the new ones. And this is like from the museum. So the electrical field, which especially works in our body as electrical current, which goes through the cells and it resonates with the bioenergetics of the cells, which very much depends on the cellular membrane potential. And as you know, the energy production in the cells, the ATP production, again, depends on the cellular membrane potential. Together with the head of our laboratory here in Kranzlin, we are just publishing a paper on the cellular membrane potential. It's still very important to understand the connection of the electrical current, its frequencies, and how it resonates with the cells. So that's the Healy. Whereas the MEG Healy, it's MEG, M-A-G, so it refers to the magnetic field. It creates a field which permeates the space and it permeates the body. And especially a very important aspect of the body, because the body consists of 99.5% water molecules. All the other molecules like proteins and enzymes and neurotransmitters and so many different molecules, they are like within the body of the water of the body. And there are 2 types of water in the body. One is the extracellular water, which is in our connective tissue. But then there is the water within the cells, the intracellular water. And both of them have very special quality. In the future, I will have a special webinar on water because water is really the cradle of life. It's the basis of life. And the water reacts very sensitively on the magnetic fields. And there's a reason behind it, because the water in our body is not normal water. Maybe you can share the PowerPoint presentation now. Then I can show you a slide, which you might have seen already. I will operate it myself and go through the different slides, which I will jump over. Here you see all the 4 editions of the MEG Healy, with each almost having 24 programs. But I want to show you a special picture, which is actually from a paper which Professor Giuseppe Viciello and I think Luc Montagnier, the Nobel laureate who discovered the HIV virus and afterwards went so much into water and frequency research, have published. It's a paper on DNA waves on water, and it shows on the left side the process how two electrons interact with each other in the quantum theory or the quantum field theory. And the important thing is that the electrons, by coming close to each other, they don't have to come close to each other and then reflect from each other, like touching each other, like billiard balls. But before touching, they still have a good distance. They exchange a photon, which is here symbolized by the wave. It's a wave. It's an electromagnetic wave, which consists of the electric field and the magnetic field. So both of these fields, the electric and the magnetic, they are interacting with each other and creating a photon. And this photon, this particle of light, is actually creating the interaction of the two electrons scattering each other. Means the two electrons see each other through an exchanging of photons from a distance. So that's important. There's action on a distance. The same thing happens with the molecules in our body. Like, for example, on the left side, you see the DNA, which is a large biological molecule. And here on the right side, you find an enzyme, which is also a very large structure. But they don't come very close, but they see each other by exchanging a wave. And this wave is a wave within the water. It has a special name. It's called a dipole wave. Why? Because water consists of small dipoles. They have a positive side and a negative side, because one side is the oxygen atom and the other side is the two hydrogen atoms, H2O. So one side is positive and the other is negative. So if there are electric fields, and they are all over the body because of the potentials, like the cell membrane potentials, therefore is so important. The atoms, the molecules of the water are aligned, and then waves are propagating, so-called dipole waves are propagating through the water. For example, if the DNA is in the water, it emanates electromagnetic waves, which then enzymes and proteins are receiving. So they know, oh, there's the DNA, and the DNA knows there's a protein, there's an enzyme. In this way, all the molecules in the surrounding interact with each other. They perceive each other. They have a holographic perception of its environment. And then something very, very special happens to these dipole waves. They're interfering with each other. And within this vibrating water, structures emerge which are actually controlled from the quantum vacuum. So that's really important to understand, that the water through the waves creates something like standing waves, so that the water within our body behaves like liquid crystals. Isn't this such a beautiful image of the water in our body? It's a vibrating liquid crystal which exchanges dipole waves, which stores light, it receives light, it stores light, it emits light. And in this way, the water is something like the conductor of the symphony of the biological molecules which are solved within the water, like the DNA, like the enzymes, like the proteins, like the lipids. This is the way how our body keeps together by a communication through the water, which is coherent. This is such an important key word. Remember, last year in February, I have introduced the Healy Coherence program, and it's still one of the most important programs which we are having. If you play this program with your MEG Healy, once you hold it in your hand, this coherence program will permeate through this frequency, through the water within our body, within our cells, the body, and it will help the water of the body to be coherent. And that's the most important thing. It's the basis of life. So that's a way how the MEG Healy works. It works through the water in the body. because water is the material form of the information field. And the information field, which contains, as we say in German language, the Bauplan, or the blueprint, probably in English, of the living system of our organism. Also, the water connects to the information field, and therefore is connected to to our spirit. So this is so important, and water can do only the job if it is coherent. So this is one of the goals which we have by using the MEG Healy, is to support the coherence of the water. And last time I spoke about, and I showed you the first study which we have now published, or which we're in the process of publishing it, about the MEG Healy. It's a magmatic module, and this was the original module of the MEG Healy, because we started to develop the MEG Healy for one reason only, and this was to incorporate the incredible frequency combinations which Carol McMakin, since more than, I think, 25 years, is applying and teaching all over the world, not just one frequencies, but two frequencies at once, addressing the issue and the tissue within the bioenergetic field. In this way, having a very, very focused effect. And there are 24 of her favorite programs within the MEG Healy. But when we then had the MEG Healy developed, we saw that it has a much bigger potential. So if you get your MEG Healy, you will get 4 modules with it. The first module is the MEG Classic. And we call it MEG Classic because it contains the best of magnetic field applications, which has been researched within the last 30 to 40 years. So we have taken from a lot of research and studies what can be applied with a small magnetic field applicator, which creates a dynamic magnetic field up to 12.5 megahertz. This is 12.5 times the frequency range which the Healy has. This is a very special feature of the MEG Healy. It's a broad range of frequencies up to 12.5 megahertz. And I choose especially 12.5 megahertz because around 10 megahertz, and this I have never spoken about, they're very special resonance frequencies of coherent domains within water. I don't want to talk here about it, but we made amazing discoveries, which we will share with you in a few weeks, in a few months, where we will present much more of our research. But here within this long range, there are a lot of important resonance frequencies of the water and the coherent structures within the water. And then there is the MEG Healy atmosphere, where the MEG Healy actually permeates the space with the magnetic field lines. You can say there's a radius of 1.5 meters, but it doesn't really stop there, because the resonance of the magnetic field frequencies within the coherent domains, in the bioenergetic system within the water of our body, doesn't depend on the amplitude of the magnetic field, but it really depends on the resonance frequency and on the phase. In order to couple with the right frequency, you also need the right phase. So this coupling is really what initiates the processes towards more coherence. That's really important. So the atmosphere program, going through the space, and I will later also talk about it, because the energy and the quality of space was a topic I researched for around 10 years before I started to develop Time Weather and Healy. The time after studying the ancient Sanskrit scriptures from India, I learned from different masters the science of the energy and information field of space, because space itself, it's not empty, and space can also be coherent. There is quantum entanglement in space. The space is structured, and it has its own energy. So it also resonates with frequencies. And we all have this experience that within a certain space we feel very well, and in other spaces we feel a tension. Depends on what has happened in the space before. It depends on the geometry of the house and the materials, and it depends also on the quality of time. It's a great science which I have called Vasati, the science of space energy. So I worked over 10 years on it. I think I wrote around 10 to 12 books just on this topic. Later, I discovered the connection between the quality of space and the position of the stars and the planets, which are actually also a kind of information field which works through the time operator on space. So all this knowledge has been implicated in the Healy atmosphere program. And finally, there is the fourth application of the MEG Healy, which is a water application, because if you can influence the water in the body with magnetic fields, you can also directly influence the drinking water, and in this way drink good frequencies, and it just makes it complete. So the MEG Healy it has these four applications, and once there will be a fifth one, which I have already planned, but this would be too much for now. So this four is really the essence of the MEG Healy. Yes, and I'm looking so much forward that you can hold it in your hands. But in the next 2 months, we will have still a few webinars where I will go deeper and deeper into understanding of the MEG Healy. And next time, which will be probably in the second half of May, we will have already 1 or even 2 more studies to talk about, which we are now parallelly doing with the MEG Healy on atmosphere, on water, and I will share the results with you. And I will go a little deeper into the science behind Healy, but behind the MEG Healy. So the best way you can apply it is use your Healy with the frequencies and the electrical electrodes to reach the cell bioelectrically and simultaneously stay within the magnetic field which the MEG Healy creates around you. In this way, the 2 quantum sensors, which you have, 1 in the Healy and actually 2 within the MEG Healy. I think once I have to speak also about the technical features of it, which are also very, very special. I will not talk about it now, but there are 2 quantum sensors, 2 quantum noise generators here inside and 1 in the Healy. And if they both contact the information field, then they're synchronizing. They're synchronizing in the way that the frequencies, which comes through the magnetic field and which comes through the electrical currents through your body, they are not separate anymore, but they are harmonic to each other, so that you actually, in a harmonic electromagnetic field. So much for now.